Her heels snapped at the worst possible moment. Emma Richardson stared at the broken Jimmy Choo in her hands, while police sirens echoed closer through Manhattan streets. 3 men in suits were running toward her, shouting something about the woman in red, which was obviously her, considering her Valentino dress practically screamed her location to all of New York. "Shoot, shoot, shoot," she muttered, limping toward the Rockefeller Center parking garage. This wasn't how she'd planned to spend her Tuesday night. She was just trying to discreetly photograph some suspicious transactions for her investigative piece when everything went sideways. Very sideways. A black limousine, long as a city block and gleaming under the streetlights, sat idling with no driver in sight. Emma didn't think twice. She yanked open the door and dove inside, closing it silently behind her. The interior was pure luxury: Italian leather, full bar, flat-screen TV, and a masculine scent that immediately made her feel strange. Safe, but strange. She crouched on the floor, trying to hide behind the seat, when she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart raced. The suited men ran past the limousine without stopping, their voices fading into the distance. Phew, Emma sighed, starting to stand up. Interesting escape technique. Emma froze. The voice was deep, with an accent that mixed New York sophistication with something more refined, dangerous and compelling at the same time. Slowly, she turned around and nearly choked. The man sat on the opposite seat, a crystal tumbler of whiskey in his hand, watching her with dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He was stunning. Tall, broad shoulders filling a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. Dark hair slightly tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through it, and a smile that was half amusement, half predator. I can explain," Emma stammered, still on her knees on the carpet. "Please do. It's rare to find investigative journalists hiding on my limousine floor." He took a sip of whiskey, never breaking eye contact. "Especially barefoot investigative journalists." Emma looked down. She was still clutching the broken heel like a weapon. "How do you know I'm a journalist?" Emma Richardson, Manhattan Tribune, specialist in exposing scandals among New York's elite. He leaned forward. "The question is, what was a respectable journalist doing running from armed men in downtown Manhattan?" "Armed?" Emma swallowed hard. "They were armed?" "Very much so." His smile widened. "Lucky for you, you chose the right hiding spot." Emma finally managed to sit on the seat, trying to recover some dignity. "And you are?" "Blake Hawthorne." He extended his hand. "But I'm sure you've heard of me." She had. Heaven help her, she had. Blake Hawthorne, heir to a business empire, philanthropist, billionaire playboy, and suspect number 1 in at least 3 of her investigations. The man she'd been trying to expose for 6 months, the most dangerous man in New York, and she was trapped in his limousine, barefoot, wearing a wrinkled Valentino, with corruption evidence on her phone that could destroy half the city's elite. "So," Blake said, refilling his glass, "how about you tell me what you discovered that made the Atlantic Consortium's men so eager to chat with you?" Emma blinked. "How do you know about the consortium?" His smile turned dangerous. "Darling Emma, I know everything that happens in this city. The question is, are you willing to find out how deep this rabbit hole goes?" As the limousine began moving smoothly through Manhattan streets, Emma realized she'd just jumped headfirst into the biggest mystery of her career, and possibly the biggest trouble of her life. The limousine glided through Manhattan's midnight streets like a predator through dark waters, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was the prey. "You're staring," Blake observed without looking up from his phone. "I'm processing." Emma had managed to compose herself somewhat, though she was acutely aware that her hair looked like she'd survived a hurricane and her lipstick had vanished somewhere during her dramatic escape. "This is a lot to absorb." "Finding out your investigation target knows you've been researching him?" Blake finally looked up, those dark eyes glinting with amusement. "Or discovering that the men chasing you work for people who make me look like a choir boy?" Emma's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Blake pressed a button. The partition between them and the driver lowered. "Marcus, take us to the penthouse and make sure we're not being followed." "Yes, sir," came the reply in a voice that suggested Marcus had dealt with much worse than paranoid billionaires and fleeing journalists. The partition closed again, leaving them in charged silence. Emma studied Blake's profile as he made a quick phone call in rapid, clipped sentences. There was something about the way he moved, controlled and precise, that made her journalist instincts scream danger, and her feminine instincts scream something else entirely. "All right," she said when he hung up. "Cards on the table. What do you know about what I discovered tonight?" Blake poured himself another whiskey and, to her surprise, prepared a glass for her as well. "The Atlantic Consortium has been laundering money through luxury real estate developments across the East Coast for 18 months. They're connected to 3 different criminal organizations, 2 of which have government ties." He handed her the glass. "You photographed their latest transaction tonight. $50 million changing hands for a development project that doesn't exist." Emma's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the whiskey. "How could you possibly know all that?" "Because," Blake's smile was razor-sharp, "I've been investigating them longer than you have." "That's impossible." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Blake laughed, a rich, genuine sound that did things to her pulse she absolutely didn't want to acknowledge. "There's the fire I read about in your articles. Yes, Emma, I've been reading everything you write. You have a gift for uncovering dirt on people. Including you. Especially me." He leaned back, studying her over his glass. "Which is why I have a proposition." Here it comes, Emma thought. The bribe, the threat, the intimidation. She'd been through this dance with other powerful men. "I'm not for sale. I'm not trying to buy you." Blake set down his glass and fixed her with a look that made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. "I'm trying to hire you." "What?" "Work with me, pool our resources. You have the investigative skills and the media connections. I have the money, the access, and the protection you clearly need." Emma blinked. "Protection? Those men tonight weren't planning to ask you nicely to stop investigating. They were going to eliminate you, Emma." The casual way he said it made her blood run cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been tracking the consortium's cleanup operations. 3 other journalists who got too close to their business have died in accidents over the past 6 months. Blake's expression darkened. "I couldn't let you become number 4. The Limousine turned into an underground garage of what looked like one of Manhattan's most exclusive residential buildings. Emma's mind raced. "So you just happened to be there tonight? I've been having you protected for your own safety for 3 weeks. "You've been what?" Emma's voice pitched higher. "Don't take that tone. My security team is very discreet. You never would have noticed if you hadn't stumbled into active surveillance from the consortium. This is insane. You're insane. I'm getting out of here." Emma reached for the door handle. "Emma." Blake's voice was quiet but commanding. She found herself freezing. "Look at me." Against her better judgment, she did. Those dark eyes were serious now, no trace of the earlier amusement. "I know you have no reason to trust me. I know you think I'm just another corrupt billionaire. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and some very dangerous people who want you dead." He paused. "Give me 24 hours to prove I'm one of the good guys. And if I say no, then Marcus drives you anywhere you want to go. I provide you with a new identity and enough money to disappear forever, and you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." Emma stared at him. The rational part of her brain was screaming that this was madness, that she couldn't trust him, that this was exactly how investigative journalists ended up as cautionary tales. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like desperation. "What aren't you telling me?" she asked quietly. Blake was silent for a long moment. Then, "The consortium killed my sister." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She'd researched every aspect of Blake's life, but his family was kept remarkably private. She knew he had siblings, but when? 8 months ago. Car accident. Brake failure. His jaw clenched. Victoria was investigating them too. She was going to expose everything. Understanding dawned. You're not trying to protect me out of the goodness of your heart. You want revenge. I want justice, Blake corrected. But yes, I want them to pay for what they did to her. The limousine stopped, but neither of them moved. Emma felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Trust him, and she might be walking into a trap. Don't trust him, and she might be dead by morning anyway. 24 hours, she said finally. 24 hours. As they stepped out of the limousine, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just agreed to something that would change her life forever. She was absolutely right. Blake's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, and it was nothing like Emma had expected. Instead of the cold, sterile luxury she associated with billionaire apartments, it was warm and lived in. Books everywhere, art that looked personally chosen rather than decorator-selected, and family photos scattered on surfaces. You can have the guest wing, Blake said, leading her down a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything you need should be there, but if not, just ask. Emma stopped walking. I'm not staying here. Yes, you are. His tone was matter-of-fact. Look, I agreed to work with you, not live with you. Blake turned to face her, and she was struck again by how tall he was. In her bare feet, the top of her head barely reached his shoulder. Emma, there are professional killers looking for you. Your apartment is compromised. Your office is being watched and your credit cards are being monitored. You staying anywhere else is a death sentence. How do you know about my credit cards? Because I'm having them monitored too. For your protection, he added quickly, seeing her expression. My security team is very thorough. Emma rubbed her temples. This is insane. This whole situation is insane. I know. His voice softened unexpectedly. But you're safe here. I promise. Something in his tone made her look up. There was a vulnerability in his expression that seemed at odds with the powerful image he projected. It occurred to her that he was probably just as thrown by this situation as she was. Okay, she said finally, but we need ground rules. Such as? First, no more having me followed without my knowledge. We're partners now, which means communication. Agreed. Second, I maintain editorial independence. Whatever we discover, I write the story my way. As long as it doesn't put you in unnecessary danger. Emma raised an eyebrow. Define unnecessary. We'll negotiate case by case, Blake said with a small smile. Third, Emma held up 3 fingers. No trying to seduce me as part of some elaborate manipulation scheme. Blake's smile widened. I would never. I'm serious. I've seen your reputation with women. I'm not going to be another conquest. Emma. Blake stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her stomach flutter traitorously. If I were trying to seduce you, you'd know it. Heat crept up her neck. That's exactly what I'm talking about. What, honesty? His eyes danced with amusement. That thing you're doing right now, the voice, the eyes, the standing too close, it's textbook playboy behavior. Maybe, Blake conceded, but it's also textbook honest attraction. Emma's breath caught. We're not doing this. Doing what? Whatever this is, this chemistry thing. We're working together, nothing more. Blake studied her for a moment, then stepped back, his expression becoming more serious. You're right, I'm sorry. This situation is complicated enough without adding personal feelings to the mix. The word feelings sent an unexpected jolt through Emma. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. Perfectly. But something in his eyes suggested they were both lying. He showed her to the guest wing, which was larger than her entire apartment, and included a bedroom, sitting area, and private bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. On the bed was a selection of clothes in what appeared to be exactly her size. How did you? I had my assistant pick up a few things. The sizes are estimates based on observation. Emma raised an eyebrow. You've been observing my clothing sizes? Blake had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. My security team is very thorough, as I mentioned. Right. Emma picked up a silk blouse that probably cost more than her monthly rent. This is too much. It's practical. You can't investigate wearing a torn evening gown. I suppose that's true. She set the blouse down. So what's our plan? How do we bring down the consortium? First, we need to understand exactly what they're doing and who's involved. Then we build an airtight case that can't be buried or dismissed. Blake leaned against the door frame. But tonight, you rest. Tomorrow we start hunting. After he left, Emma sank into the impossibly comfortable bed and stared at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been choosing which corrupt businessman to investigate next. Now she was hiding from killers in the penthouse of the most enigmatic man in Manhattan, trying to ignore the fact that he was absolutely right about the attraction between them. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We know where you are. This won't end well for you. Before she could fully process her fear, there was a soft knock on her door. Emma? Blake's voice was concerned. Is everything all right? My security system detected unusual activity on your phone. She opened the door to find him standing there in pajama pants and a t-shirt that showed off arms that were definitely more muscular than his business suit suggested. His hair was tousled, and he looked younger, more approachable. They found me, she said, showing him the text. Blake's expression darkened as he read it. My security team will trace this immediately. But Emma... He looked up at her. This changes things. How? 24 hours might not be enough. This is going to take longer than either of us anticipated. Emma looked at him. This man who was either her salvation or her downfall, she couldn't tell which, and realized she was already in far deeper than she'd intended. Then we better get comfortable with each other, she said. The smile he gave her in return was dangerous and full of promise. I was hoping you'd say that. Emma woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, which was distinctly not what she expected from a billionaire's penthouse. She'd anticipated a personal chef, formal dining, maybe some pretentious breakfast situation that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Instead, she found Blake standing at the kitchen island in jeans and a white button-down, sleeves rolled up, actually cooking. You cook? She asked, accepting the coffee mug he handed her. It was perfect, strong, with just enough cream, exactly how she liked it. My mother insisted all her children learn. She said no Hawthorne would ever be helpless in a kitchen. His smile was soft, fond. Victoria was actually the best cook among us. She could make anything. The past tense hung in the air between them. Emma watched him flip bacon with practiced ease, noting the slight tension in his shoulders at the mention of his sister. Tell me about her, she said gently. Blake was quiet for a moment, concentrating on the eggs he was scrambling. She was fierce, brilliant, had this way of cutting through nonsense that made people either love her or hate her instantly. He glanced at Emma. She would have liked you. Because I'm good at cutting through nonsense too? Because you're not afraid of powerful men who try to intimidate you. He plated the eggs, adding perfectly crispy bacon and what looked like pastry from a French bakery. Most people are intimidated by money and status. You just get annoyed by it. Emma accepted the plate, surprised by how domestic this felt. Is that why you've been reading my articles? Initially, yes. You've been getting uncomfortably close to some of my legitimate business interests. Blake sat across from her at the breakfast bar, but then I realized you were getting close to things I was investigating too. Your piece on the suspicious real estate developments last month was particularly insightful. The one that got me death threats? The one that made me realize we were hunting the same prey. Emma took a bite of the eggs and nearly moaned. They were perfectly creamy, seasoned with herbs she couldn't identify. Okay, these are incredible. What aren't you good at? Trusting people, letting go of control, not falling for brilliant women who are trying to expose me. The last part slipped out with a self-deprecating smile. Blake, I know, ground rules, I'm not trying to seduce you. I'm just being honest about what's happening here. Before Emma could respond, both their phones started ringing simultaneously. Blake answered his first. "Marcus, what do you have?" His expression grew serious as he listened. "How many?" "I see. No, maintain distance but keep monitoring. We'll be down in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Emma, who was just ending her own call. "My editor wants to know where I am," she said. "Apparently someone called the Tribune saying I was in danger and might need police protection. The consortium is escalating. Marcus says there are 6 men positioned around the building, but they're not moving in. They're waiting for something." Emma's appetite disappeared. Waiting for what? Instructions, most likely, or for us to make a mistake. Blake stood, his demeanor shifting from domestic to dangerous. "We need to move the timeline up. Today we go on the offensive." An hour later, they were in Blake's private office, which looked like a cross between a war room and a tech startup. Multiple monitors showed news feeds, financial data, and what appeared to be surveillance footage from various locations around the city. Emma counted at least 6 people working at computers, all of whom looked like they could double as bodyguards. "This is my investigation team," Blake explained. "Ex-military, ex-intelligence, all completely loyal." "To you or to justice?" Emma asked. One of the team members, a woman with short auburn hair and intelligent green eyes, looked up from her computer. "In this case, they're the same thing. You must be Emma Richardson. I'm Sarah Chen, former FBI Cybercrime Division." She gestured to the screens around her. "I've been tracking the consortium's digital footprint for 8 months. And what have you found?" Sarah's smile was predatory. "Everything: bank transfers, shell companies, communication intercepts, travel records. These people are good, but they're not invisible." A tall man with graying temples approached them, extending his hand to Emma. "Colonel James Mitchell, retired Army Intelligence. Welcome to the War Room, Ms. Richardson." "War Room?" Emma shook his hand, impressed by his firm grip. "That's what we call this operation," Mitchell explained. "Because that's what this is, a war against some of the most sophisticated criminals on the East Coast." For the next 4 hours, Emma was immersed in the most comprehensive criminal investigation she'd ever seen. The Atlantic Consortium wasn't just laundering money. They were running a sophisticated international operation involving human trafficking, drug distribution, and political corruption across 8 states. "The real estate developments are just the tip of the iceberg," explained Rodriguez, a bear of a man who introduced himself as former DEA. "They're using construction projects as cover for moving people and products across state lines." "And the federal government knows?" Emma asked. "Some elements do, others are being manipulated." Blake pulled up a complex organizational chart on the main screen. "This is where it gets complicated. The consortium has people inside law enforcement, the judiciary, and several federal agencies." Emma studied the chart, her journalist's mind already organizing the information into a story structure. "This is massive. This could bring down half of Washington." "Which is why they want you dead," Sarah said bluntly. "Your investigation was getting close to exposing the real estate angle, which would have led to everything else." "And why Blake's sister was killed?" The room went quiet. Blake's expression hardened. Victoria discovered the human trafficking element. She had proof that children were being moved through construction sites disguised as worker housing. Emma felt sick. Children? Girls mostly, ages 12 to 16. Blake's voice was carefully controlled. Victoria was going to expose everything the day she died. "Where's her evidence?" "Gone. Her apartment was burglarized the night before the accident. Her computers were destroyed, her files stolen." "But you must have copies, or—" "We have some things, not enough." Blake turned to face her. "That's where you come in. Your investigation, combined with what we've gathered, might be enough to build a case that can't be buried." Emma looked around the room at the faces watching her expectantly. These people were giving her the chance to write the story of a lifetime, to expose corruption on a scale she'd only dreamed of. But they were also asking her to put herself in mortal danger for it. Sarah pulled up another screen. We've identified 3 key figures in the consortium's leadership: Marcus Donnelly, real estate mogul; Senator Patricia Hawkins, who's been pushing legislation that benefits their operations; and Dr. Elena Vasquez, who runs several charitable organizations that serve as fronts. I know Donnelly, Emma said. I've been trying to get an interview with him for months. That's not going to happen through normal channels, Mitchell said. These people don't talk to journalists. They eliminate them. Blake moved to stand beside Emma, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. There is another way, though. I'm listening. Donnelly's hosting a charity gala next week. 500 of the city's most influential people, including most of the consortium's network. Blake's eyes met hers. We could get you inside. As what? A journalist? They'll spot me immediately. As my date, Blake said quietly. The room fell silent. Emma stared at him, processing the implications. Your date? It's perfect cover. You'd have access to everyone we need to investigate, and I'd be there to protect you. Blake, Emma said slowly, attending a party full of people who want me dead seems like a monumentally bad idea. Not Emma Richardson, investigative journalist, Sarah interjected, pulling up another screen. Meet Elena Morrison, art dealer from Boston, recently moved to New York to expand her gallery. Emma stared at the fake identity Sarah had created, complete with backstory, social media presence, and even fake reviews for her fictional gallery. This is incredible work. Sarah's the best, Blake said with obvious pride in his team. Elena Morrison has no connection to journalism, no history of investigating anyone. She's just a cultured woman who's caught the attention of Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. And how exactly am I supposed to gather evidence at a party? Rodriguez held up a device no bigger than a button. Micro cameras, audio recording equipment, GPS tracking. You'll be wired better than a NASA mission. Emma felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they were proposing. This is insane. If they figure out who I really am, they won't, Blake said with quiet confidence, because I'll be with you every step of the way. Something in his voice made her look at him sharply. There was a protective intensity in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. What if something goes wrong? Then we extract you immediately. Mitchell has contingency plans for every possible scenario. 17 different extraction protocols, Mitchell confirmed, including helicopter evacuation if necessary. Emma rubbed her temples. I can't believe I'm even considering this. You're considering it because you know it's our best shot at exposing them, Blake said. And because you're brave enough to see it through. She looked around the room again. These people had been fighting the consortium for months, putting their own lives at risk for justice. Victoria had died trying to expose the truth. How could she walk away from that? All right, she said finally, I'll do it. Blake's smile was brilliant and relieved. Thank you, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I want to know everything about the plan. Every detail, every contingency. No surprises. Absolutely. Second, if this goes sideways, you get everyone out safely. The story isn't worth people dying for. Agreed. And third, Emma hesitated, then forged ahead. We need to talk about what happens after, when this is all over. Blake's expression became unreadable. What do you mean? I mean us. This partnership. Whatever this is between us. Emma gestured between them. We need to figure out where we stand. After we bring down the consortium, Blake said quietly, we can figure out anything you want. As the team began planning their infiltration of the gala, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. She was no longer just investigating a story. She was actively fighting a battle against some of the most dangerous people in America. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that the most dangerous thing of all might be how safe she felt with Blake beside her, and how right it felt to be his partner in this fight. The war was about to begin. The plan was audacious, risky, and absolutely insane, which was probably why Emma found herself agreeing to it. Let me understand this correctly, she said, pacing around Blake's office at 2 in the morning. You want me to attend the consortium's charity gala tomorrow night, wearing a wire, and attempt to gather evidence from some of the most dangerous criminals in America while they're all in the same room. That's a very reductive way to put it, Blake replied, not looking up from the guest list he was reviewing. You'll also be my date, which provides perfect cover for your presence. Your date. Emma stopped pacing. At a party full of people who want me dead. They want Emma Richardson, investigative journalist, dead. They don't know anything about Elena Morrison, my mysterious new companion who's never been seen in society circles before. Blake finally looked up, and his expression was serious. Sarah has created a complete background identity for you. As far as anyone knows, you're the daughter of a Portuguese businessman, recently returned from studying art history in Europe. And how exactly does that explain my presence at your side? Blake's smile was slow and dangerous. You're the woman who finally tamed Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Oh, for crying out loud. Emma resumed pacing. This is ridiculous. What if someone recognizes me? No one will. Your photo has never appeared in the Tribune. You're very careful about maintaining your anonymity. And with the right styling, hair, makeup, you'll look completely different. Blake set down the guest list. Emma, I wouldn't suggest this if I didn't think it would work. Sarah looked up from her computer where she'd been monitoring various surveillance feeds. The gala is our best opportunity. Donnelly will be there, along with Senator Hawkins and Dr. Vasquez. All three key players in one place, relaxed, drinking, potentially careless with their words. Potentially careless enough to incriminate themselves in front of a woman wearing recording equipment. People underestimate what they'll say in front of pretty women at parties, Colonel Mitchell said from across the room. Especially powerful men who think they're untouchable. Emma shot him a look. Pretty women? Beautiful women, Blake corrected quietly. And they do. I've seen it happen countless times. Something in his tone made Emma's pulse quicken, but she forced herself to focus. What exactly are we hoping to accomplish? I can't exactly interview them about their criminal activities. You don't need to. Sarah pulled up another screen showing detailed profiles of the three targets. We need evidence of their connections to each other, proof that they're coordinating their activities, bank account numbers, safe combinations, addresses of properties we haven't identified yet, anything that gives us leverage. Blake stood and moved to the window overlooking the city. There's something else. According to our intelligence, they're planning something big. Something that's supposed to happen within the next 2 weeks. What kind of something? We're not sure, but Victoria discovered references to an operation called Clean Slate before she died. Blake's jaw tightened. We think it involves eliminating everyone who poses a threat to their organization. Emma felt cold, including us. Especially us, which is why we need to move fast. Rodriguez joined the conversation, carrying a small case that he set on the table. Let me show you what you'll be working with. He opened the case to reveal equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. Tiny cameras disguised as jewelry, microphones smaller than earrings, and a GPS tracker that looked like a decorative pin. This earring, Rodriguez pointed to what looked like a simple diamond stud, records everything in a 30-foot radius. This bracelet has a panic button that alerts us immediately if you're in trouble, and this necklace has a GPS tracker accurate to within 3 feet. Emma picked up the earring, marveling at how normal it looked. How do I get the recordings to you? Real-time transmission, Sarah explained. We'll be monitoring everything from a van parked outside the hotel. If we hear anything important, we can guide you to get closer or ask follow-up questions. Through what? Blake moved closer to her. This. He held up what looked like a high-end hearing aid. Completely invisible once it's in. We'll be in constant communication. Emma stared at the equipment, the reality of what they were asking hitting her fully. You realize that if they discover any of this, I'm dead. They won't discover it, Blake said with quiet confidence, because I'll be with you the entire time. Blake, you can't babysit me all night. People will notice. People will notice that I'm completely captivated by my beautiful date, Blake corrected. Which won't be hard to fake. The way he said it made Emma's stomach flutter, but she forced herself to stay focused. What's our cover story? How did we meet? Sarah pulled up another screen. Art gallery opening 3 weeks ago. You were selling a piece by a Portuguese artist your father represented. Blake fell for you immediately and has been pursuing you ever since. And Elena Morrison just happens to be available for this gala? Blake finally convinced you to accompany him to a public event, Mitchell explained. It's your first official appearance as a couple. Very romantic, very believable. Emma rubbed her temples. This is insane. But it's also our best shot, Blake said. Emma, these people killed my sister. They've killed other journalists. They're planning to kill more. We can stop them, but we need evidence that will stick in court. She looked around the room at the faces watching her expectantly. These people had dedicated months of their lives to this fight. Victoria had died for it. Could she really walk away? All right, she said finally. But I want to practice, a lot. If I'm going to pull off being Elena Morrison, I need to know everything about her. Blake's smile was brilliant. Sarah's prepared a complete briefing. For the next 18 hours, Emma immersed herself in becoming Elena Morrison. She studied art history, practiced speaking with a slight accent that suggested European education, and memorized details about galleries, artists, and collectors. Sarah had created such a detailed backstory that Emma began to feel like she actually knew Elena's fictional friends and family. The transformation was completed by Marcus Chen, Sarah's brother, who turned out to be one of Manhattan's top makeup artists and hairstylists. The key, Marcus explained as he worked on Emma's appearance, is to enhance your natural beauty while creating a completely different impression. When people look at Elena Morrison, they need to see sophistication, culture, old money, not investigative journalist. He darkened her hair from blonde to a rich chestnut brown, styled it in an elegant updo that made her neck look longer and more graceful. The makeup was subtle but transformative. Smoky eyes that made her look mysterious, lips in a shade of red that seemed both classic and modern. Now for the dress, said a woman Emma hadn't met before, wheeling in a garment bag. Emma, meet Isabella Rodriguez, our fashion consultant, Blake said. She used to style celebrities before she decided fighting crime was more interesting. Isabella unzipped the garment bag to reveal a stunning midnight blue gown that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Custom made. It's designed to accommodate all your equipment while making you look like you belong at a billionaire's party. The dress was perfect, elegant without being flashy, expensive without being ostentatious. It fit Emma like it had been made for her, which, she realized, it had been. How did you get my measurements? She asked. Blake had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have had Sarah hack into your personal shopper's database. I don't have a personal shopper. You do now. Elena Morrison definitely has a personal shopper. When Emma looked at herself in the full-length mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Elena Morrison was sophisticated, mysterious, beautiful in a way that suggested both culture and danger. Blake's going to swallow his tongue when he sees you, Isabella said with satisfaction. As if summoned by his name, Blake appeared in the doorway and stopped dead. Emma watched his expression change from casual friendliness to something much more intense. You look, he started, then seemed to lose his words. Different, Emma suggested. Stunning, Blake said quietly. Absolutely stunning. The way he was looking at her made Emma's pulse race. This was supposed to be pretend, she reminded herself. They were playing roles, but the heat in Blake's eyes felt very real. We should go over the plan one more time, she said, trying to regain her equilibrium. Right. The plan. Blake seemed to shake himself back to reality. Marcus will drive us to the Meridian Hotel. We arrive at 8:30, fashionably late but not so late as to draw attention. We mingle for the first hour. I introduce you to key people. You charm them while gathering information. What if they ask specific questions about art or my background? Then you deflect gracefully and change the subject. Remember, you're new to the city, still getting established. It's natural that you wouldn't know everyone or have strong opinions about local issues yet. Sarah held up a tablet showing the hotel's floor plan. Dinner is served at 9:30 in the main ballroom. You'll be seated at table 3, which puts you near Donnelly and Senator Hawkins. Use dinner conversation to gather intel. After dinner, there's dancing and more mingling, Mitchell continued. That's when you'll have the best opportunities for private conversations. Dr. Vasquez tends to step out onto the terrace for air around 11. That might be your chance with her. Emma studied the plan, trying to memorize every detail. What's my exit strategy? Blake develops a headache around midnight and you leave together, Rodriguez explained. Natural, believable, gives you several hours at the party without overstaying your welcome. And if something goes wrong? If you're in immediate danger, press the panic button on your bracelet. We'll create a distraction and extract you within 90 seconds, Mitchell said. If you're just uncomfortable or need guidance, adjust your earring. We'll know you need help and provide it through your earpiece. Blake moved closer to Emma. And I'll be watching you every second. If I sense any threat at all, we're leaving immediately. Blake, you can't be overprotective. It'll look suspicious. I can be attentive without being suspicious, Blake replied. Trust me, after what happened to Victoria, I'm not taking any chances with your safety. The mention of his sister sobered the mood in the room. Emma realized that for Blake, this wasn't just about justice. It was deeply personal. I understand, she said softly. Sarah looked up from her monitors. We should leave soon. Traffic to the hotel will be heavy with all the gala attendees. Emma took a deep breath, checking her appearance one last time. The woman in the mirror was confident, elegant, mysterious. She could do this. Elena Morrison, she said to her reflection. Art dealer, sophisticate, Blake Hawthorne's new romantic interest. And temporary partner in crime fighting, Blake added with a smile. As they prepared to leave for what could be the most dangerous night of Emma's life, she realized that somewhere along the way, the temporary part of their partnership had started to feel much more permanent. The limousine ride to the hotel was charged with tension. Emma ran through her cover story one last time while Blake reviewed the guest list, pointing out faces she needed to recognize. Remember, he said as they pulled up to the hotel, you're Elena Morrison tonight. Confident, cultured, and completely captivated by your charming date. And you're Blake Hawthorne, billionaire playboy who's finally found a woman worth settling down for. That, Blake said, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch, might be the easiest role I've ever played. Before Emma could process what he meant by that, the limousine door opened and they stepped out into the bright lights of the hotel entrance, surrounded by photographers and society reporters. Emma smiled and took Blake's arm, becoming Elena Morrison completely. The Lion's Den awaited. The Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom was a masterpiece of old-world elegance and modern luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors that had hosted presidents and royalty, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Manhattan's glittering skyline. Emma had attended her share of high society events as a journalist, always watching from the sidelines. Always the observer. Tonight, as Elena Morrison, she belonged here among the city's most powerful elite. Breathe, Blake murmured against her ear as they paused at the ballroom entrance, his hand warm and steadying on the small of her back. You look perfect. Emma smiled graciously at the photographer capturing their arrival, her hand resting naturally on Blake's arm as if she'd done this 1,000 times before. The diamond bracelet on her wrist, containing the panic button that could save her life, caught the light as she adjusted her hair. I feel like I'm about to jump out of an airplane without a parachute. Good thing I'm an excellent pilot, Blake replied, guiding her into the crowd of Manhattan's most influential people. The ballroom buzzed with conversations in multiple languages, the soft clink of crystal glasses, and the gentle hum of a string quartet playing in the corner. Emma recognized faces from magazine covers, political news shows, and financial reports. These weren't just wealthy people. They were the puppet masters who controlled politics, finance, and society itself. Elena Morrison, The mystery woman who tamed Blake Hawthorne, whispered a woman in diamonds worth more than most people's houses as they passed. I heard she's European royalty, came another voice. Portuguese art dynasty, Blake corrected smoothly, loud enough for the gossips to hear. Much more interesting than royalty. Emma felt a flutter of pride at how naturally Blake supported her cover story. In just 3 days, they'd developed an almost telepathic understanding of each other's rhythms and reactions. The next hour passed in a careful dance of introductions and strategic conversations. Emma found herself surprised by how naturally the role of Elena Morrison came to her. She discussed the influence of Portuguese maritime culture on contemporary art with a collector from Boston, debated the merits of abstract expressionism versus neoclassical revival with a museum curator from the Met, and even fielded pointed questions about her fictional gallery's acquisition policies with confidence that impressed even herself. You mentioned you're focusing on emerging artists, said a sharp-eyed woman who introduced herself as the director of a major auction house. What's your screening process for new talent? Emma sipped her champagne, buying herself a moment to think. I look for artists who understand that art isn't just about beauty, it's about truth. The uncomfortable truths that society doesn't want to face. She let her gaze drift meaningfully around the opulent ballroom. Sometimes the most important art comes from the darkest places. How provocative, the woman replied, studying Emma with new interest. I'd love to see your collection sometime. You're a natural at this. Sarah's voice whispered through her nearly invisible earpiece during a brief moment when Blake had stepped away to speak with a senator. Stay alert. Hawkins is approaching from your left. Emma adjusted her earring slightly, the signal that she'd heard and understood, and turned to see a striking brunette in a silver gown that probably cost more than Emma's annual salary approaching, with the confident stride of someone accustomed to having doors opened for her. Helena, darling. The woman's voice carried the practiced warmth of a politician. I'm Patricia Hawkins. Blake mentioned he was bringing someone special tonight, but he failed to mention how absolutely stunning you are. Senator Patricia Hawkins, one of their primary targets, and according to their intelligence, the political protection that allowed the consortium to operate with impunity. Emma's pulse quickened, but her smile remained warm and genuine. Senator Hawkins, what a pleasure. Blake speaks of you so fondly. Emma had rehearsed this exact scenario with Sarah's team dozens of times. I understand you're quite the art enthusiast yourself. Oh, please call me Patricia. And yes, I collect contemporary American pieces primarily, though I'm always interested in expanding my horizons. Patricia's eyes glittered with what seemed like genuine warmth, making it even more chilling to remember what this woman was suspected of. I'd love to hear about your gallery. Blake mentioned you represent some fascinating Portuguese artists. For the next 20 minutes, Emma found herself in a surprisingly engaging conversation with the senator. Patricia was intelligent, charming, well-informed about art history, and seemed genuinely interested in Emma's fictional background. She spoke passionately about supporting emerging artists, funding arts education programs, and preserving cultural heritage. It was almost easy to forget that this articulate, seemingly caring woman was allegedly involved in human trafficking and political corruption on an international scale. You know, Patricia said, lowering her voice conspiratorially and moving closer to Emma, I'm having a small gathering at my Georgetown home next weekend. Very intimate, just a few collectors and artists who share my passion for meaningful work. You should come. I'd be honored, Emma replied, mentally recording every word. Will it be a showing for a particular artist? Something like that. We're launching a new initiative, bringing art and culture to underserved communities, particularly focusing on young people who need guidance and opportunities. Patricia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and there was something in her tone that made Emma's skin crawl. Very important work, life-changing for the young people involved. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Sarah had briefed her extensively on how the consortium used charitable language to disguise their trafficking operations. Young people was a euphemism that made her stomach turn. That sounds wonderful. What age group are you focusing on? 12 to 16 primarily. Such a formative age, don't you think? When the right kind of guidance can really shape their futures in profound ways. Patricia glanced around the room, then leaned even closer. These children often come from such difficult circumstances: poverty, abuse, neglect. We provide them with opportunities they could never imagine otherwise. Emma fought to keep her expression neutral while inside. Her stomach turned violently. This was it. Patricia was essentially describing child trafficking, though couched in language that sounded humanitarian to anyone not listening for the code. That's incredibly generous of you. I imagine the logistics of helping so many children must be complex. Oh, it is. But Blake tells me you have quite the network of international contacts through your family's business. That must be invaluable for creating opportunities for these young people across different countries. My father does have connections throughout Europe and South America, Emma replied carefully, sticking to her cover story while fishing for more information. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. You see, Elena, some of our most successful placements have been international. The opportunities abroad are just extraordinary. So much more lucrative than anything we can offer domestically. Patricia's eyes lit up with what looked disturbingly like greed. The families who adopt these children are willing to pay premium prices for the right kind of young person. Emma's blood ran cold. Patricia was talking about selling children internationally, and she was discussing it like a high-end real estate transaction. Your international work must require significant coordination, Emma managed, her voice steady despite the horror she felt. Documentation, transportation, ensuring the children are properly prepared for their new lives. Oh, we have excellent partners for all of that. Marcus Donnelly handles most of the logistics. He has properties everywhere, which makes transportation and temporary housing so much simpler. And Dr. Elena Vasquez manages the health and wellness side, making sure our young people are properly conditioned for their new opportunities. Patricia took a sip of champagne, completely oblivious to the monster she was revealing herself to be. It's really quite a sophisticated operation. Emma felt sick. They were discussing a comprehensive trafficking operation involving all three primary targets, and Patricia was treating it like a casual business conversation at a charity gala. Target is giving us everything. Sarah's voice whispered urgently in her ear. Keep her talking, but be careful not to seem too interested. It sounds like you've built something truly impactful, Emma said. The coordination between different organizations and countries must be challenging. Less challenging than you might think, especially when you have the right political connections. I've been able to ensure that certain regulations are relaxed, and that our transportation methods face minimal scrutiny. Patricia lowered her voice further. Between you and me, Elena, there's so much red tape around international adoption and youth services. We've found ways to streamline the process significantly. Emma realized Patricia was describing how she used her political position to facilitate trafficking. The corruption went to the very heart of the government agencies meant to protect children. Blake appeared at Emma's side, 2 champagne flutes in hand, and a smile that didn't quite hide the tension in his eyes. Patricia, I hope you're not monopolizing my date's attention completely. Just getting acquainted, Patricia replied smoothly, accepting a glass from Blake. I was inviting Elena to my Georgetown gathering next weekend. I think she'd find our work very illuminating. How thoughtful of you, Blake said, handing Emma a glass. Though I might have to steal her away soon. There are so many people who want to meet the mysterious Elena Morrison. Of course, of course. Elena, we'll talk more later. I think you'll find our international opportunities very profitable. Patricia's smile was predatory. And Blake, you've outdone yourself this time. She's absolutely perfect. As Patricia melted back into the crowd, Blake leaned close to Emma. You okay? You look pale. She just described their entire operation, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. International trafficking. using government connections to avoid regulation, working with Donnelly for logistics and Dr. Vasquez for medical preparation. And Blake, her voice caught. She's talking about selling children like they're luxury commodities with price tags. Blake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign of his fury at what Emma had just endured. "We're going to destroy them all." "Blake Hawthorne!" A booming voice interrupted them before Emma could respond. "And this must be the mysterious Elena I've been hearing whispers about all evening." Emma turned to see a tall man with silver hair, an expensive tan, and a predatory smile that made her skin crawl. Marcus Donnelly, real estate mogul, and, according to their intelligence, the consortium's logistics coordinator, who moved children like cargo across international borders. "Marcus," Blake replied smoothly, his hand moving protectively to Emma's back. "Elena Morrison, Marcus Donnelly. Marcus owns half the luxury developments on the East Coast." "Only half?" Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of genuine warmth. "I'll have to work harder." "Elena, a pleasure. I understand you're new to our magnificent city?" "Recently arrived from Europe," Emma confirmed, shaking his hand and trying not to shudder at his cold, calculating touch. "Still getting settled, though Blake has been an excellent guide. Well, if you need any real estate advice, I'm your man. I have properties everywhere: New York, Boston, Miami, Charleston, even some absolutely beautiful developments in South America." His eyes glinted with something predatory. "Perfect for someone looking to expand their horizons internationally." "How interesting. What kind of developments do you focus on?" "Mixed use, primarily. Residential, commercial, some light industrial. Very versatile properties that can be adapted for various purposes as needs change." Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice in a way that made Emma want to step back. "I actually have a particularly exciting project in Colombia that might interest someone with your international background. We're always looking for sophisticated partners who understand the importance of discretion in certain business ventures." Emma felt Blake tense beside her, but his expression remained perfectly pleasant. "Discretion? Some business ventures require a lighter regulatory touch, if you know what I mean. Fewer questions asked, more flexibility in how we utilize our resources and manage our inventory." Marcus's smile was reptilian, especially when dealing with sensitive international transactions. "We're getting incredible intel," came Sarah's urgent voice in Emma's ear. "He's describing money laundering and human trafficking. Try to get specifics about the Colombia property." "Colombia sounds fascinating," Emma said, channeling every ounce of acting ability she possessed. "What part of the country?" "Just outside Cartagena. Absolutely stunning coastal location. Very private, very secure. We're developing it as a residential community for young people who need a fresh start away from their previous circumstances. International placement program with very exclusive clientele." There it was again, the coded language for trafficking. Emma forced herself to smile while inside she felt like screaming. "That sounds very humanitarian of you." "Oh, it's quite profitable too," Marcus chuckled, completely without shame. "Amazing what certain clients will pay for the right kind of specialized housing arrangements, especially when it comes with comprehensive care services and complete discretion." Emma felt nauseous. He was literally discussing pricing children like they were luxury real estate investments. "The logistics of international placements must be incredibly complex," she managed. "Not as complex as you might think when you have the right infrastructure. We have excellent transportation networks, private jets, shipping connections, even some very useful government partnerships that make border crossings much smoother than they would be otherwise." Marcus glanced around the room, then leaned closer. "Dr. Vasquez has been absolutely invaluable in that regard. Her medical credentials and humanitarian reputation open doors that might otherwise remain closed." So Blake's hand pressed more firmly against Emma's back, a steadying presence that kept her grounded as she absorbed the horror of what she was hearing. "Speaking of Dr. Vasquez, I don't believe I've seen her tonight," Blake said. Oh, she's here. Probably out on the terrace taking one of her many important calls. Very dedicated to her work, that woman. Never stops networking. Marcus's smile turned even more predatory. Elena, you absolutely must meet her. I think you'd find her approach to youth development quite innovative and profitable. I'd love to, Emma replied, though every instinct screamed at her to run as far away from these people as possible. As if summoned by their conversation, a woman in an elegant black gown approached their group. Doctor. Elena Vasquez was smaller than Emma had expected, with dark hair pulled back in a severe chignon, intelligent dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and an air of cool professionalism that somehow made her more frightening than if she'd looked obviously evil. Marcus Blake, she said in lightly accented English that suggested expensive international education. And you must be Elena Morrison. I've heard such intriguing things about you tonight. Doctor. Vasquez, Emma replied, accepting the woman's handshake and noting how clinical it felt, like being examined. The pleasure is mine. I understand you do important humanitarian work. Among other things, yes. Elena was just expressing interest in our international youth programs, Marcus said. I was telling her about the Columbia project. Dr. Vasquez's eyes sharpened with interest, and Emma felt like a specimen under a microscope. Ah, yes, very exciting work indeed. We're making such a profound difference in these young lives, giving them opportunities they could never have imagined. Marcus mentioned you handle the medical and wellness aspects, Emma said carefully. Among other responsibilities, yes, proper health care is absolutely crucial, especially for children who have been traumatized by their previous circumstances. We provide comprehensive care, medical, psychological, educational, even complete identity documentation when necessary for their transitions. Dr. Vasquez's smile was cold and clinical. Our clients expect perfection, and we deliver it. Emma's blood chilled. Identity documentation. They were erasing these children's identities, making them disappear completely from any system that might track or protect them. That's incredibly thorough, she managed. It has to be. Our clients pay premium prices for healthy, well-adjusted, properly trained young people. We simply cannot afford to deliver anything less than absolute perfection. Dr. Vasquez spoke as if discussing luxury car manufacturing rather than human beings. Quality control is essential in our line of work. The casual way Dr. Vasquez discussed selling children made Emma feel physically ill. These weren't misguided humanitarian workers or even greedy criminals. They were absolute monsters who had turned child trafficking into a precision business operation. Your success rate must be impressive, Blake said, his voice carefully neutral. Quite impressive indeed. 97% successful placements over the past 18 months. Very few complications or client complaints. Dr. Vasquez's eyes glittered with pride in her horrific achievements. What happens in the 3% that aren't successful? The question slipped out before Emma could stop herself, her journalistic instincts overriding her caution. Dr. Vasquez's smile turned arctic, and for a moment Emma saw the true monster beneath the professional facade. Complications are dealt with permanently and efficiently. We cannot have unsatisfied clients or loose ends. That might jeopardize our operations. Bad for business, you understand. Blake's hand pressed more firmly against Emma's back, a warning to be careful, but also a reminder that he was there to protect her. That's quite a remarkable track record, Blake said smoothly, stepping slightly closer to Emma. You must have exceptional oversight systems in place. The very best money can buy. Patricia handles the political side, ensuring we have proper protection at the highest levels and minimal interference from troublesome agencies. Marcus manages all logistics, properties, and transportation networks. I handle the medical, psychological, and security aspects. Dr. Vasquez looked directly at Emma with those calculating eyes. We're always looking for new partners, especially those with established international connections and proper discretion. Elena's father has significant business interests in Portugal and Brazil, Blake said. Very well connected in both legitimate business circles and more. Flexible. Enterprises, indeed, Dr. Vasquez murmured, studying Emma like a predator evaluating potential prey. We should definitely talk more privately sometime very soon. I believe we could find many areas of mutual benefit and shared profit. Emma forced herself to smile while inside she was screaming. I'd be very interested in learning more about your operations. Excellent. Patricia mentioned her Georgetown gathering next weekend. Perhaps we could arrange some private time to discuss specifics and explore how your connections might enhance our international capabilities. Perfect, Emma replied, though the thought of being alone with any of these people terrified her more than anything she'd ever experienced. As Dr. Vasquez excused herself to continue networking with other potential partners in evil, Emma felt like she might collapse from the emotional weight of what she'd just endured. In the span of 2 hours, she'd gathered evidence of an international child trafficking ring, operating with government protection and involving some of the most powerful people in America. You're doing incredibly, Sarah's voice whispered in her ear. We have more than enough evidence to start building an airtight case. Stay strong. But as Emma looked around the elegant ballroom filled with Manhattan's elite, many of whom were probably complicit in, or at least aware of the consortium's activities, she realized that this wasn't just 3 criminals operating in secret. This was an entire network of wealthy, powerful, supposedly respectable people who were enabling the systematic abuse and exploitation of children for profit. Blake, she whispered, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of the corruption surrounding them. This is so much bigger than we thought. I know, he replied grimly, his eyes scanning the crowd with new understanding. But we have what we need to start tearing it all down, piece by piece. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal blur of strategic conversations and careful evidence gathering. Emma found herself talking to donors who casually mentioned overseas investments in youth development programs, philanthropists who discussed innovative international placement opportunities, business leaders who spoke about specialty transportation services for sensitive cargo, and politicians who referenced streamlined regulations for humanitarian organizations. Each conversation added another piece to the horrifying puzzle, revealing a criminal network that was vast, sophisticated, and deeply embedded in the highest levels of American society. Emma recorded evidence of money laundering through art sales, political corruption involving multiple senators and federal officials, and business partnerships that facilitated trafficking across at least 6 countries. By the time Blake declared his fictional headache and they made their graceful exit at midnight, Emma had recorded enough evidence to potentially bring down not just the consortium's leadership, but dozens of their partners, clients, and enablers throughout the government and business world. The limousine ride back to Blake's penthouse was initially silent, both of them processing the magnitude of what they'd discovered and the horror of spending hours socializing with people who bought and sold children like commodities. It wasn't until they were alone in the back seat, the partition raised for privacy, that Emma finally allowed herself to begin processing what she'd endured. Those children, she whispered, her voice breaking as tears began streaming down her face, washing away Elena Morrison's carefully applied makeup. They're selling children like they're luxury cars or pieces of art, pricing them, conditioning them, erasing their identities. Blake immediately pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she sobbed against his chest, his own emotions barely controlled. We're going to stop them, Emma. Every single one of them. They'll pay for what they've done. There are so many of them, Blake. It's not just 3 people, it's dozens, maybe hundreds. How do we fight something this enormous and powerful? The same way David fought Goliath, Blake said quietly, his voice fierce with determination. With the right weapon and absolute courage, and we have both. Emma clung to him, drawing strength from his steady presence. What if we're not strong enough? What if they're too powerful to bring down? Then we make ourselves stronger. We find allies, we build our case until it's unbreakable, and we don't stop until every last one of them is behind bars. Blake tilted her chin up to look at him. Emma, you just gathered evidence that will save hundreds of children's lives. You're already strong enough. By the time they reached Blake's building, Emma had composed herself enough to walk through the lobby, though she still felt shaky from the emotional impact of the evening. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts about what came next. Back in Blake's office, the team was already deep into analyzing the recordings Emma had gathered. The room buzzed with focused energy as Sarah, Colonel Mitchell, Rodriguez, and several other team members worked to process and organize the evidence. Sarah looked up as they entered, her expression grim but excited. Emma, this is extraordinary work. This isn't just evidence. This is a complete roadmap to their entire operation. We have recorded confessions from all 3 primary targets, plus evidence implicating at least 25 other individuals, including politicians, business leaders, and international partners. Colonel Mitchell was coordinating with contacts at the FBI, DEA, and Interpol. We're going to move fast and hit them simultaneously. Coordinated raids on all their properties, complete asset freezing, international arrest warrants, the full package. But Emma, he looked at her seriously. You realize you're going to be the star witness in what will probably be the biggest trafficking case in United States history. Emma nodded, still wearing Elena Morrison's elegant gown, but feeling completely like herself again. I understand. Whatever it takes to stop them. They'll try everything to discredit you, threaten you, maybe even try to eliminate you before the trials, Rodriguez warned, his expression concerned. These people have unlimited resources and absolutely no conscience. Then I guess it's a good thing I have the best protection money can buy, Emma said, looking at Blake with complete trust. Blake's smile was fierce and protective. No one's going to hurt you. I'll make sure of that personally. As dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma realized that everything in her life had fundamentally changed. She was no longer just a journalist investigating a story. She was a key player in bringing down one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations in the world, and she'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with the man who'd made it all possible. Blake, she said softly, as the team continued their intensive planning around them. Yes? After this is all over, after the trials and the testimony and the media circus, what happens to us? Blake cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense and completely serious. After this is all over, Elena Morrison disappears forever, and Emma Richardson gets to decide if she wants to take a chance on a reformed billionaire who's completely, hopelessly, irrevocably in love with her. Emma's breath caught, her heart racing. You're in love with me? Completely, Blake admitted without hesitation. Have been since the moment you broke into my limousine with a broken shoe and enough courage to take on the world. Emma laughed through her tears, feeling lighter despite everything they'd discovered. That was only 4 days ago. Sometimes, Blake said, leaning down to kiss her softly. 4 days is enough to change everything forever. As sirens wailed in the distance, the beginning of what would become the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in recent history, Emma kissed him back and realized that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was fall in love with someone who was worth risking everything for. 6 months later, Emma Richardson stood on the steps of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, having just completed her testimony in the trial that had captivated not just the nation, but the entire world. The Atlantic Consortium case had become the largest human trafficking prosecution in history, involving defendants from 8 countries and resulting in the rescue of over 400 children. The media circus surrounding the trial had been intense, but Emma had handled every interview, every press conference, every moment in the spotlight with the same courage and integrity that had led her to investigate the consortium in the first place. She'd become the face of investigative journalism at its finest, proving that one person with enough determination could take down even the most powerful criminal networks. Patricia Hawkins had been sentenced to life in prison without parole, Marcus Donnelly received the same sentence plus forfeiture of all his properties, which were being converted into legitimate housing for trafficking survivors. Dr. Elena Vasquez had attempted to flee the country but was captured and also sentenced to life in prison. In total, 37 individuals had been convicted, including senators, business leaders, and international partners. But more importantly, the children were safe. 412 children had been rescued from various stages of the trafficking pipeline, reunited with families where possible, and placed in protective care when family reunification wasn't safe or possible. The consortium's operations had been completely dismantled, their assets seized and converted into a fund for survivor support and prevention programs. Blake waited for her outside the courthouse steps, no longer her temporary partner in a dangerous mission, but her permanent partner in every sense that mattered. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had deepened beyond anything either had thought possible. They'd faced death threats together, testified side by side, and supported each other through the emotional trauma of reliving the horrors they'd uncovered. "Ready to go home, Ms. Richardson?" he asked, offering her his arm with the same gentle gallantry he'd shown her that first night in his limousine. "More than ready, Mr. Hawthorne," she replied, taking his hand instead of his arm and intertwining their fingers. "More than ready." As they walked away from the courthouse together, followed by a discreet security detail that had become a permanent part of their lives, Emma reflected on how a broken heel and a moment of desperate fear had led her to the biggest story of her career and the love of her life. Blake squeezed her hand. "What are you thinking about?" "Just everything. How we got here, what we've accomplished, what comes next." Emma smiled up at him. "Are you ever going to miss the excitement? The danger?" "Never," Blake said firmly. "I've had enough danger to last several lifetimes. From now on, the most dangerous thing I want to do is ask you to marry me." Emma stopped walking, her heart racing. "Blake, I know it's soon, and I know we've been through something extraordinary that might not translate to normal life. But Emma..." Blake turned to face her fully, his eyes serious and full of love. "I can't imagine my life without you in it. Not just as my partner in fighting crime, but as my partner in everything." Emma felt tears gathering in her eyes, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Are you proposing to me on the courthouse steps? I'm asking if you'd be willing to consider it when I do it properly, with a ring and a plan and probably a lot more romantic setting than federal courthouse steps." Emma laughed, feeling lighter and happier than she'd ever felt in her life. "Blake Hawthorne, when you do ask me properly, the answer is going to be yes." His smile was brilliant as he pulled her into his arms right there on the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters and photographers, but completely oblivious to anyone but each other. "I love you, Emma Richardson. I love you too, Blake Hawthorne." As they kissed, Emma thought about how sometimes the most dangerous hiding places turned out to be exactly where you belonged, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was trust someone enough to let them save your life. Sometimes danger and love were the same thing, and sometimes that was the most beautiful thing of all. The end.